The election of 1800 set two precedents in American history. It was the first election in which the press played a big role. And for the first time in presidential politics, power was peacefully shifting from one political party to another. In this highly contentious election, the founding party of the nation, the Federalists, had been defeated, and the popular leader of a new political party was moving into the White House. Number 3, Thomas Jefferson, Democratic Republican, 1801 to 1809, 58 years old, from Virginia. Thomas Jefferson was the first president inaugurated in Washington.
On the day of his inauguration, Thomas Jefferson walks to the unfinished Capitol to deliver his inaugural address. In one of the most important statements ever made by a president in any inaugural address, he tells the assembled group, "We are all Federalists. We are all Republicans."
But Jefferson did not intend to follow the Federalist model for the presidency.
Jefferson believes that his election was virtually a second revolution. He thought the government was going down a very bad path under the Federalists. He thought he'd saved it.
Jefferson believed the Federalists had put too much power in the central government. He vowed to reverse that.
Well, it's the old adage, of course, a Jeffersonian adage, that government is best which governs least, except when you're elected to office.
He was a remarkably casual man who sometimes greeted guests in his slippers. He was also eccentric and secretive. Such was the self-styled character of Thomas Jefferson.
Jefferson viewed himself and presented himself as a man of the people. Somewhat ironic, again, because here is Mr. Jefferson, who lives in perhaps the most elegant home in all of America, Monticello. He's hardly a man of the people. But on the other hand, he has this ability to connect and to make this pretense, to make this image of this Democrat with a small d.
To help spin this image, Jefferson adopted a casual tone for protocol and official behavior at the president's mansion.
It was said that if you went to the White House, quite often Mr. Jefferson himself would open the door.
Jefferson also ended the formal state dinners established by Washington and continued by Adams. Instead, he hosted informal supper parties, where guests could sit anywhere they pleased.
Even at the same time that Jefferson is symbolically downgrading the office, he is using it very effectively, and he calls the tune.
President Jefferson was a quiet but effective manager who preferred working in the privacy of his office than in the public eye.
He does not give his annual messages to Congress as speeches in person. He doesn't do that. He sends them written messages instead.
He did not like to give public addresses. He was not a good public speaker. He had a very, very soft voice, apparently.
But he was definitely a brilliant and cunning politician.
He is brilliant at using power in a way that people don't know that he's using it.
This was especially true with the press.
Jefferson handled the press very, very well. He understood the importance of the press.
The press, however, didn't always give him a free pass. In 1802, a tabloid writer of the day reported Jefferson's alleged affair with Sally Hemings, one of his slaves.
He's mentioned by name by James Callender, and that's the first time Sally Hemings' name appears in the newspaper.
Freud would have a field day with this. Sally Hemings is the half-sister of Martha Wales Jefferson, who was Jefferson's wife. She is the daughter of Martha's father and a slave woman.
Jefferson skillfully managed the scandal by doing nothing.
Thomas Jefferson never responded to any allegations, any accusations of his relationship with Sally Hemings or with anyone else. Jefferson simply ignored it.
Early spend control from a master politician. I mean, if more people could follow that prescription, people wouldn't get into the trouble that, they get into by talking too much. Jefferson never talked about anything that he didn't want to talk about.
The defining moment of Jefferson's presidency was his expansion of executive power to make the Louisiana Purchase, the mega deal of the 19th century. It more than doubled the size of the United States for a mere $15 million.
This is just a bargain. But he doesn't know whether it's constitutional for him to do this. In fact, he rather thinks it isn't.
Had he been true to his principles, he never would have done it.
Not only did he do it, but he used Alexander Hamilton's system of finance to fund it, a system he had publicly opposed for 15 years. In effect, Jefferson did a complete political 180. Because of this, the Federalists attacked him.
They hammer him with this. The argument is, you are the one who's been worried about the federal government doing too much and taking on too much power. Well, here you've grabbed a third of the continent and you're proposing to rule it by military governors. Doesn't that look like big government to you?
Ignoring his critics, Jefferson also authorized a secret exploration of the territory, the Lewis and Clark Expedition. It would eventually be regarded as an epic American adventure. But when Jefferson sent a secret message to Congress requesting money for the mission, his enemies screamed that it was an unconstitutional military foray.
So Jefferson, the man who supposedly loved small government, is a president who dramatically expands the power of the federal government. That, of course, is a tradition in our presidency.
In 1804, Thomas Jefferson was overwhelmingly re-elected. Yet he found little joy during his second term.
Jefferson is a very sensitive man. He hates the criticism that he gets. And his second term becomes hell to him. He feels as if he's in prison.
I think Jefferson's greatest shortcoming in office was his inability to deal with the rising international crisis.
That crisis was the escalating war between England and France.
Jefferson believed that America need not be involved with Europe, that somehow it was possible for us to ignore the world beyond us and to deal only with an interior America.
The problem was American merchants were trading with England and France. That infuriated both sides. Acting impulsively, Jefferson issued the Embargo Act of 1807, stopping all trade with all foreign nations.
What a foolish solution to a problem. Doesn't want to go to war with France, doesn't want to go to war with England. And so instead of making a decision, he says, okay, we're not going to trade with anybody. Well, this is not a statesmanlike decision, and it's disastrous for New England trade.
The Embargo Act of 1807 was extremely controversial, and it really sank his second term.
By 1808, Thomas Jefferson was tormented by migraine headaches. The presidency had aged him considerably. Jefferson came to hate the presidency so much that he left it off his gravestone. Yet his achievements remain unparalleled in American history. He took the oath of office intending to change the power of the presidency. And indeed, he did. Thomas Jefferson kept 2 bear cubs at the White House. They were given to him by Lewis and Clark and housed in cages on the South Lawn.